cleaning PhD golden nugget exclusive tip. They can make you bleed, essentially. That's why I use this method. It's fast, it's effective, and it keeps the screens minimally wet. Cleaning PhD here. We got a simple exterior window cleaning job here. I'm gonna show you how to get it done if you're a homeowner. If you want to get into window cleaning, if you just want to clean your own windows, no problem. I'm gonna show you exactly how to get that done. Let's get right into it. Screen cleaning is going to be the first thing that we're doing here. You want to remove all the screens, clean the inside windows first. Screens you got to be careful with. They're not always structurally sound. I just have a microfiber towel here, a bit of Dawn dish soap and water. You don't want too much soap, just enough so that you get a good cleaning effect, but you don't want the screens to be all wet and saturated and dripping, because obviously you got to carry those back through the house. So I usually start with cleaning the screen itself first, and then I work on the frame of the screen. Nice and easy. This is just a light clean. There's so many ways to do screens. You can get the hose out and scrub them with a lot of soap and a brush or a cloth, and then you can rinse them all the way down. They're going to be quite saturated at that point, and they're going to need at least a couple hours to dry unless you take another hand towel and dry them. Be very careful going through the house, as some screens have frames that will trap water inside, and that will make it very difficult. As you move the screen around, it will drip water all over the floor, so you might want to carry a bunch of towels with you. That's why I use this method. It's fast, it's effective, and it keeps the screens minimally wet. It doesn't use a whole lot of water. So you can see as we're going, this cloth is getting quite dirty, so we're just going to give it a dunk and wring it out. Nice and easy there. You can see with this screen here, sometimes screens are damaged. So you can see right here, the screen is separating from what's called the spline in here, backing on this screen here. So this screen has some previous damage. I would err on the side of caution with screens. You don't want to go through and damage property. Sometimes it's easy to get in the mindset that, oh, you have to make everything perfect or the customer's not going to hire you back. They're going to understand, especially if you mention it to them, that you didn't want to cause damage to the screen, so you just went ahead and left that alone. Alternatively, you can just dust it. Be very careful. Don't put a whole lot of pressure on it. It's very easy if there's a little tiny split in the screen or something and you put some pressure on it, it'll make that hole bigger. So just be very careful with screens and don't go overboard trying to clean something that is previously damaged here. Something I want to draw your guys' attention to with cleaning screens is when you're stacking screens after you're done cleaning them, be very careful not to poke them into each other with the corners of the screens. These are not too bad. They're kind of rounded off and they're plastic, so not a big deal. But occasionally, for instance, with this screen, you'll have corners that are quite sharp on the end of the screen. Obviously not enough to cut your finger or anything, but definitely sharp enough to cut into the screen portion of the screen. So when you're stacking, just make sure you don't bump them into each other. Keep them nice and flush together and stack them carefully. Don't be rushing and trying to stack everything very haphazardly and having them fall over and everything. Also with the wind, it's a very calm day, but when you're doing screens outside, sometimes they can get blown in the wind and blow over very easy. They're very light in that regard, so the wind can blow them over and they can actually intermingle and you can create a tear in the screen that way. So just be very careful with screens in general. A lot of times you don't have to worry about all this, but occasionally on houses, probably more often than not when you're at houses that are not brand new or anything, they're going to have screens that are not in the best condition. That is a cleaning PhD golden nugget. Another thing that I would suggest is wiping this threshold here with a damp towel. It's not something that's maybe technically included, but it just adds a really nice clean appearance when you open the door, and that goes a long way with customers and everything like that. On my belt here, obviously, I've got the 14 and the 12-inch squeegee, or maybe it's a 12 and a 10, something like that. I've got the Ettore Porcupine here. I do like it. It offers a lot of scrubbing power. The problem with some of these specialty scrubbers is that they often don't hold water like just a standard scrubber would, and that's kind of a big downside with them. Often they can dry out quickly or just not hold water very well. I do like this one. You've got to be careful not to use it on any sort of tint on the windows, And you can easily tell most windows that have tint because they'll have a little section where the window and the tint's actually separated. It'll look like a little sheet is on the window. You definitely want to pay attention to that as you're going. And some windows, like these ones, it can be a little bit tough. You've got a lot of, especially these people, they like bird feeders and stuff like that, which I don't blame them. It's cool looking at birds. Another cleaning PhD golden nugget exclusive tip. This is more of an observation. It's not really, I don't have many tips for it, but windows right next to bird feeders and stuff, I don't know how, a lot of junk, hard matter, suet, and things like that. I think the bird feeder seed is very sticky, and that gets kind of splattered on the windows, and maybe the birds fly into the windows and stuff. The windows are going to be quite dirty, and they're going to have a lot of little hard matter on the windows, so you just want to give them an extra good scrub. That is something which maybe is not included, but you can spend the extra effort giving it just a good old scrub with the applicator. Spend, 15 extra seconds scrubbing, especially in problem areas. You can use a walnut pad or some sort of quad zero steel wool to get that stuff off of there. You just want to make them look nice. It's nice coming back to clients year after year because you know exactly what they expect. If they call you back year after year, you know exactly what they want, and oftentimes they are quite chill with what you do, so you don't have to kind of worry about going above and beyond in some regards. When you're coming back to windows that you've cleaned year after year, it's very easy to tell exactly what the client wants, and that is a great benefit. You can see my water here after I cleaned the screens. It's quite dark and dirty, so at this point we're going to want to go ahead and get some fresh water. Some windows, they're so dirty that your bucket is going to look black basically after every time you dunk your scrubber into here. So on houses like that, I'm not going to change the water every single 3 or 4 windows because the windows are so dirty. I'm going to go ahead and change it 2 to 3 times, just like a normal house. Maybe a couple more if it's a really big house, but I'm not going to spend a bunch of extra time getting fresh water when the windows are like that. So buckets on the inside, I like to, this is kind of a modification I've made this year and into last year, is carrying around a bucket on the inside of the house. I used to not do that because I didn't want to carry extra things. I didn't want to spill any water or anything like that, and that is a potential. But if you're careful and you put the bucket in strategic areas across the house, you don't put it like right in the middle of the path, and you don't fill it up very much. You basically put half a gallon to maybe a gallon, depending on the size of your bucket. I think this is a 6-gallon bucket, so a gallon at the very bottom is not actually going to come up very high, because the last thing you want to do is drop the bucket or have it splash around. That's not going to be good in any case. And I still have, some minor fears about that, but you're just being very careful with it, and you're not doing a bunch of acrobatics, while you're carrying your bucket. Just be very cautious. And that is beneficial because the applicator is going to get dirty. That's kind of the state of affairs. And I do carry a little bottle of solution on me. All this you can get at windowcleaningresource.com. A little bottle of solution just like this here, and this just has my soap solution in it and some water essentially, and that will be great for the windows because sometimes your scrubber, especially if you maybe do the garage windows or something like that, your scrubber is going to get quite dirty and it's going to start affecting the quality of the clean. It's best just to actually wring it out in a bucket of water. That's kind of the best thing to be doing. I'm gonna get you guys a better angle here on these windows. So that's kind of the best thing to be doing, is actually wringing out your water, or wringing out your scrubber maybe every 3, 4, 5, 6 windows, depending on the dirt level of the windows and how big they are. So little tips here when you're cutting in: scrub up the frame, scrub up the window thoroughly. You can take a towel and you can wipe the frame all the way around, and then you simply wipe off your squeegee. That's not a necessary step, but it's something I like to do every once in a while. Cut in to the top, move down across, and then down, over, and fan the window. just like that. Go ahead and put the video on 1/2 speed, 75% speed. Play that over and over. Get the technique down. It's gonna feel awkward at first, but just like everything new, you get better the more you practice, and it becomes second nature, becomes muscle memory. Scrubbing up, and these frames are quite dirty, so I'm not gonna get them perfect. That's really it's not something that I want to be. Man, it's tough in that way, because I say things don't need to be perfect, but that's all in context. So perhaps somebody just watching the video, they're like, oh man, his quality is not going to be very good because he keeps saying he doesn't want things to be perfect. And it's all in context. When I say I don't want things to be perfect, obviously, ideally, I would want them to be perfect. It's not always ideal situations. You just want them to be really good, or good enough for the customer, and good enough for yourself and your time constraints, obviously. So when I say things don't always have to be perfect, that's the context that I'm assigning that in. And we're walking through here. I'm not sure. I mean, it's the only way to get to the windows. Sometimes you have to kind of trample plants a little bit. And it's great when you're setting up your ladder to know what plants are hardy plants and what plants don't mind if they get a little bit trampled, and what plants do. There's a lot of plants that are very delicate, and some people, they're out in their yard all the time and their landscaping is on point. They would get quite upset if you trample plants. Worst comes to worst, talk to the customer. I think communication is a massive thing in business that a lot of people do not have under wraps. It's always better to text the client and keep them updated. Oftentimes that is the difference between a happy customer and a not so happy customer. You want to start the day, you want to start the job off on the right note. So if you're going to be 15 minutes late, obviously you strive to get there early or on time. I always give a window of time that I'm going to arrive. I basically never say I'm going to be there at 9 a.m. sharp. That's something that's not always feasible. Traffic and all that gets in the way. Obviously you can say, hey, you have to arrive early and you have to leave early and you have to have everything planned out. Yeah, I agree that's the ideal scenario, but it's just extra stress to be worried about. And I'm gonna actually go off on a tangent here about screens. So we've got this screen here. A lot of people think these screens have to be mounted one way or another, like they have to be mounted from the inside or the outside. That's not the case on a lot of different screens with these clips here. Basically any window with a clip. It doesn't have to be mounted just from the inside or the outside. You're going to be able to do it both from the inside and the outside. So everyone's a little different. You'll learn screens as you go, but this is just an example. This one slides back and forth. You take these springs and you line it up to the top track here. You can see the screen's going to fit into these tracks here. So you want to find the deepest track, and that's usually where you put the springs. In this case, it's the very top one. You line up the top, put the screen up to here, and you press very so slightly, and that'll get the screen in place, and it'll be able to move back and forth freely. So when you're pressing on the screen, don't press exactly on the screen. Put all the pressure on this aluminum frame here, and that can basically hold the weight of your thumb pressing up against it. And we'll show you another example over here. Back to what I was saying, communication is absolutely essential when you're in any sort of business. I think customer service is something a lot of businesses lack, and you can obviously see it as a customer when you interact with certain businesses. Some people They don't want to respond. They forget about your email. They take forever to respond. They take forever to do things. I think that's a big part of business, is having great customer service. Whenever I'm late to a job, or I'll give a window of time that I'm going to be there, I never say, hey, I'm going to be there at 9 a.m. sharp. I say I'm going to be there between 8:30 and 9:30. I'm going to be there between 9 and 10. I'm going to be there between 2 and 3. You can give a bigger window if you're not exactly sure when you're going to be there, and then just say, hey, I'm going to be there between 2 and 4 p.m. All right, and I'll give you a text when I'm 30 minutes out. That's also a great way to do it, because you don't want to have people waiting on you and wondering where you are. I've lost clients, usually just with misunderstandings or not having proper communication. Sometimes people, you say, hey, I'll be there between 2 and 4, and maybe it's 3:30, and they're sitting there wondering where you are and if you're even coming. Some people, you'll give a window of time, and it won't be past the time that you said you would be there. It's just gonna be close to it, and they're gonna be sitting there saying, where is this person? What is going on? And that's just an added level of stress that you don't want to deal with. Go ahead and just keep them updated. Say, hey, I said between 3:30 and 4, I'm actually going to be there at 4:30, and text them that a couple hours before that time period. Don't text them right when it's 4 p.m. or something like that, and you're like, hey, I'm going to actually be there at 4:30. Just give them time and properly communicate, just like you would want if somebody's showing up at your house. You don't want to sit there, take up your whole day waiting for this person. So that's just something you would want to happen. You'd want to be updated, if the cable guy is coming to install something, the FedEx guy there. Amazon's very good at this. They have their systems down. They are very good with updating the delivery times and giving you hey, we're 2 stops away, we're across town, we're not going to be able to deliver it today, but it'll be there early tomorrow. So screen like this here, this is just a 1-story house all the way around, so I decided not to use water-fed pull on that. These screens just have a clip instead of at the top like the last one, it's on the side. So just push the window to either side and you'll be able to see exactly where the clip is. It's right on this side, and you can push right into the clip and just lift the screen out. Simple as that. And we're just gonna go ahead and clean these screens as is. And you can see these screens are quite dirty. I don't know what it is, there's a lot of dust and stuff around here. They do a lot of yard work, so these screens are a little bit dirty, and you just do the best you can with them. It's kind of best to not be cleaning the screen directly on the ground, because your cloth is gonna pick up a lot of dirt and dust and grass and stuff from the ground, and it's going to track that onto the screen. So try to set up the screen cleaning on a deck or on a porch or somewhere that's a little bit easier on yourself to not get the screen all dirty. And I'm going to one-hand this. I've got the screen in one hand. You could set the screen down, but I just don't want to go up and down the ladder a bunch of times. Give the window a good scrub. Always clean from top to bottom. Another pro tip from Cleaning PhD, cleaning top to bottom is basically necessary, because you don't want to track any dirt from the top to the bottom once you've cleaned the bottom. And you can see, look at these tracks. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're not going to be perfect here. You can give it an initial kind of clean there, and then the water is going to drip down, and you'll give it another wipe, and that'll be a pretty good clean there. So squeegee the top. Some of these tracks here, or these I don't know what you call them, the edges of the window, the frames of the window, you can just wipe it with your squeegee so it doesn't drip down. Then you're going to go ahead and clean the bottom pane. And these are double hung windows, so if you I actually should probably set this down. These are double hung windows, so if these windows were 2-3 stories off the ground, you can actually bring them inside. They have little clips where you can bring them inside and clean the window, clean the outside of the window from the inside. And I have videos on that. Go ahead and search up how to clean double hung windows on my channel, and you will find those videos for your education and viewing pleasure. Make sure to detail the window. Then we'll grab our screen from down here. It's a little bit wet, but it'll dry. You don't want it sopping wet, and you don't want to click the screen in and have a bunch of water go onto the glass. So just like last time, these windows are reversible, but I usually put it on the right side if the tracks are the same depth. Take the springs, put them into the track there, push it with your thumb, or you can just give it some pressure on this side and then clip the screen right back in. There you go, that's a clean window. We're moving right along. Ooh. And this is always kind of a difficult window to clean because it's kind of a well window, but I'm just gonna do the best I can. Give it a little brush here. Just like we've been saying. Oh man, it might be better actually to get down in there. Whew. All right, here we go. Whew. I can't actually reach to the very bottom of the window, so it is what it is. Sometimes window cleaning is a dirty job. So, like we've been saying, not every single window has to be perfect, and you'll get better as you go. You'll get better at making the window better and better with less time, and that's kind of the thing. If you're an experienced window cleaner, you can get it so much better than a novice window cleaner with less time. So if you're experienced, your version of doesn't have to be perfect is going to be much better than a novice's version of doesn't have to be perfect. Because sometimes you don't even know how dirty the window is. You don't know how to examine the window, and you don't have the eye quite to actually examine whether the window is clean or not. As you get better, that stuff will all come along with the ride. Learning to kind of visually see the window and determine how dirty or not dirty it is. So we can go ahead and clean one side of the screen, pop the screen out, and then go ahead and clean the rest of the screen. These screens are in much better shape than some of the other ones. Sometimes people on their houses, they just have like they've replaced some of their windows and they have an older set of windows and a newer set of windows, and the newer ones are totally good. A pro tip on these screens. You see these clips here? These will bite you if you're not careful. So when you're running your hand along the screen, be very careful not to let the meat of your palm or your fingers catch on these, because they can make you bleed, essentially. Set that there. What you can also do with these tracks, if they're really dirty, you can just take your scrubber and give it a little clean like that, so you're not wasting so many towels. So you can see I actually did clip my finger on that, and it gave me a little bit of a flesh wound there. So you can see I actually messed up there. I did not go from top to bottom. I started cleaning the window, cleaning the frame and everything, the sill there, and that's actually going to track a lot of dirt onto the window. I don't think it's going to be a massive deal, so we'll just go with it. But in general, you want to save this bottom piece for last if you're using your scrubber to clean it. And then you're going to have to dunk your scrubber again. So just be aware, clean from top to bottom, and it'll make your life a lot easier. You don't have to go over things. You can just simply clean top to bottom, and then you don't have to track back and redo any windows or anything like that. I think it's important to gauge the customer's expectations. So along with the contract or the reminders, which basically nobody reads, you just want to see how finicky they are with the windows. Some people, they just have special quirks, and you kind of modify the job based on that. Some people, they care a whole lot about a specific window or a specific set of windows. And if you see these clips here, they're bent. Sometimes they bend way out. You can just push them right back. But make sure they're flush along this frame when you're inserting them, or they won't go back in properly. There's some very difficult screens where if that clip is catawampus in any sort of way, it will be very difficult to put back into the window. And you don't want to be forcing things and damaging screens. These little windows here, some people care about them, some people don't. These people do not. They don't want me to clean those. They don't care if I clean those, so we're gonna just keep moving on here. Gauging your customers' expectations and learning about different customers is super important. I would suggest to all people that as you are finishing up your job, especially on any new clients or anything like that, as you're finishing up your job, say, go to them when you have 15, 20 minutes left, or 30 minutes maybe, and say, hey, I'm finishing up the job here. Is there anything you need to check over? Do you have any questions for me? And a lot of times, especially if they know you, if they know your work, they like your work, they've had you back many times, they're just gonna say, oh no, you always do a good job, and that'll be that. But a lot of people as well, depends on the person, they'll go through and check your work, and they'll maybe point out something that you missed or that needs to be addressed a little bit. They'll have a question on the window. So sometimes there is hard water spots on the windows. Sometimes there's a broken seal on the windows, and they'll have the belief that you did not in fact clean that window, which you could have cleaned it or not, and it would look basically exactly the same, especially if it's a very oxidized or very intense broken seal. Doesn't matter if you clean the window or not, it's not going to look like you cleaned it just because of the state of the window. And that's kind of in the window restoration realm. People will ask you about that all the time. You know, what do I do about this? Can you explain this for me? All I say for that is, I mean, you can talk about it longer if you want. Basically, on every single window, every single double paned glass, most modern windows now, actually in each window they have two panes. There's an inside pane and an outside pane, and there's a layer of gas between that. And so a broken seal occurs when air, oxygen and stuff gets inside that seal in between the layers, and that'll cause a haziness, that'll cause cloudiness, it will cause just, you know, different spots on the windows that look like, they just look like imperfections that you actually cannot take care of. You can't clean those. So yeah, you can explain all that if you want. You can just say, hey, it has a broken seal, I cleaned it, but oh man. When you're cleaning windows, it's like this, like you have to stop somewhere. This house really needs like a house wash, and look at that big old spider. This house actually kind of needs a house wash. So you can do a little bit of dusting and stuff, but you have to end it somewhere. Sometimes it's just the state of affairs, and you're not going to get everything exactly perfect, but it should be pretty good. But you have to stop cleaning somewhere. That's, you know, a realization you have to have, is that you can't start cleaning the whole entire house. And some houses, they're like that. It's like, this needs a lot more than a window clean. No house in specific I'm suggesting, but you might say to yourself, like, this needs a whole lot more than a window clean, but that's just not really your job. Ooh. Hey, it got in. Sweet. That's not really your job to clean the whole house and everything like that. So just kind of stay in your lane. You're gonna make things look a lot better than they were, guaranteed. So don't stress about, like, I don't need to clean the siding when I'm here. That's not the point of me being here. If they want the siding cleaned, that would be sweet, because that's, as we talked about in another video, an add-on. A great add-on you can do: siding cleaning, house washing, gutter cleaning, wiping the gutter faces, all that sort of good stuff is a fantastic add-on that will increase your ticket price per window job rather, and it'll make the customer happy because they don't have to run around to all sorts of different companies and try to find quotes and everything like that. You can simply give them the opportunity to do that all through you. And that's something that has helped me, is just suggesting other services that they could use that you provide. Not always do customers, like I said, all those handouts you give out, the contracts, the informational packets, basically nobody reads those. It's very rare that people actually read those, just like you, the terms and conditions. Hey, you've got to agree to these terms and conditions. How many people actually read that stuff? I'd say like less than 1%, maybe even less than that. Maybe a certain portion of the people read a little bit of that, and then they're just like, all right, that's enough. But so understandably, the customer doesn't read everything you send them, and that can't really be expected. So very important things I would just reiterate on the job when you're in front of them, when you have their attention. And I wouldn't give them a whole, don't give them a whole spiel, don't take up their whole day, especially if they're busy, they need to go somewhere. Just relay the important info. So, hey, I noticed you had a couple broken seals on the glass. I can show you if you want. Sometimes they want to see that, and sometimes they're like, oh yeah, I already know about that, so no big deal, just do the best you can. Sweet. Maybe on your informational packets you send all the services that you provide, and you're just expecting them to reach out to you and schedule that up, which that's not always going to be the case. Always reiterate. Maybe pick one thing that you see that they could maybe use and say, hey, if you have an interest next time. So something like house washing, I don't bring my house washing trailer to every single. All right guys, quick how-to on replacing screens. When you've got these doors with the locks here, go ahead and engage the lock so you don't have to continually open and close the screen or close the storm door as you go. These storm screens, they are not going to be replaced as per customer instruction. And go ahead and close this so you don't get any critters inside. Big pro tip, always use booties. Reusable booties are the best. You spend 20, 30 bucks on them and you've got them for quite a long time. So all these screens are slightly different. These ones pop into the tracks like so, and they have these clips here. Very simple. We're gonna do that with all three. Pop it into the track and then lock it just like so. Oh, sometimes these can be a little difficult. Screens can always be a little bit difficult. They are a huge learning curve on how not to damage screens. Sometimes the clip is already down, so you have to move it up so you can get the screen inside. And you can see over here, this one's not totally flush. So we're going to take it off and move it down. Make sure we place the screen right inside the lock there. Moving right along. All these screens that we put on from the outside, unlock the window, pull it with the tab here, and then lock it in place. Very easy. Sometimes water will slip back onto the track there, so simply close it. Sometimes windows are not, they're a little bit bent, not totally flush, so that's the best you can do as long as it's locked. Go ahead and lock the window as you get done. I kind of make a habit of that, locking up the windows. Close both of those, give the track a final wipe there, shut the window and lock. Moving along, we've got these screens here that go into these rectangular windows. They've got clips, as you can see, on just one side here, so they're going to fit into the track at the bottom, and then they're going to come up and lock right into. Sometimes it can be a little difficult. Sometimes if you have screens that they look very similar, go ahead and try popping it into the opposite window. And sometimes screens, they just have a fit that makes it so they just need to be popped right into the specific window. A lot of times you can switch screens in and out, the placement of the screens and where they go, but also a lot of times they need to be fit back into the specific window. So a lot of screens are interchangeable in that way, and some are not. As we're going through, we're just checking the windows, making sure they look good, making sure we didn't miss anything, turning off lights if you need to do that. And we have one last screen in the basement here. And this is pretty quick, popping in just a few screens. This screen, get the screen ready, you know, this is all about saving time. Get the screen ready to pop right in. This one fits right in here. Be careful of this handle, sometimes you have to move it around to fit the screen in, and then lock it, and that's flush right there. Perfect. All screens are in, windows are cleaned. Clean and PhD, I am out. Make sure you collect everything as you go. You want to put everything kind of in the same general area. You don't want to spread stuff all around the house and lose stuff. We have one last bank of windows here. These garage windows, they have this lip that'll collect water. So don't scrub all the way up to the lip and smash onto the top. Just do about an inch away from the top so that the water doesn't bleed down when you leave. Very important. You don't want to have drips and stuff after you leave, so anytime you can avoid that, that is a good idea. Just feather in. The top of the window is quite dry, so feathering is best when the whole window is wet and you need to get water away from an edge. However, if you leave the very top dry, feathering's not super necessary. Give it a good scrub. Again, feathering a little bit at the top and just closing out like that. You don't want your applicator super wet when you're doing these windows. As you're moving the applicator up and down, water will get shoved up into that crevice there and it'll drip down when you leave. Obviously not something you want. So nice and quick going along here. This is the kind of speed you should be able to expect when you become fairly proficient at window cleaning. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the best window cleaner in Michigan. I could be. I don't know how you'd measure that though. Then we're obviously going to take our wet towel and our dry towel. Wet towel at the bottom, dry towel then comes through, detail the bottom, and then the rest. Sop up the bottom, and then the rest. And this is quite repetitive work, but you can get very efficient at it, especially if you've got, I mean, a towel in each hand and you're not switching a lot. As you're detailing, move the towel around with your finger and find the dry area, because you don't want to wipe dirty water back on the window. Great, that's a complete job. This is Cleaning PhD. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.